So, is narcissism today natural? Yes, natural for the society we live in, unnatural for an ancient way of thinking. What we really need to understand about narcissism is that it's something that we need if we are trying to get ahead and do something. If we're trying to make something work, start a project, complete a task, that we have to have something that pushes us forward, that gets us out of bed in the morning. I think we take narcissism in the completely wrong light because it has a positive side and a negative side. We can't seem to separate the two. If narcissism is positive, it means that you'll have a bit of get up and go and want to achieve something, and it may require you to step forward, to talk to people, to lead a group, to put yourself in a position where you're in the limelight, you're on the stage, you're at the forefront of an operation. All these kinds of situations require you to have the confidence and the get up and go to actually achieve that. Now, if this idea runs away with you, then it tends to slightly veer towards a negative form of narcissism. And this is primarily what is happening to us today. We find ourselves in situations where we are having to tolerate dominant people, toxic people, people who are running away with their ego, shall we say, and who are not able to check themselves and help others to do something that gets them to step forward, because a negative narcissist will just want to take the limelight and that's the end of it. And through that, they're not likely to be able to offer anything constructive. And this is sometimes the problem with people who are eager to be recognized. They forget that there are other people around. Now, what we need to realize about this is that people who, I was going to say suffer from negative narcissism, because it is a suffering in a sense, they are people who are likely to have had a bad time earlier in their life, because this isn't natural. Being negative with a narcissistic attitude isn't a natural thing, and it comes from usually having been abused or having been terrorized, having a lot of their liberties and boundaries taken away and trampled upon, so that they therefore feel the need to just surge forward in whatever they do, because they can't stand the pain of being pushed back. Now, having said that, there's another thing to consider, that we are actually living in a world that requires us to surge forward, sometimes aggressively, especially in business practice, just to get out there, do what you've got to do, go for it, do it with all your strength and might, and never mind the rest, just do it. And it's this attitude that we all feel obliged to adopt somehow because of the world we live in. It's encouraged in us. And it makes it very difficult, because we can't seem to tell the difference between doing it in a healthy way and doing it in an unhealthy way. As you might have heard me say before, this didn't exist in ancient prehistoric tribes, nor even in modern tribes. It was largely unknown because narcissism, usually surfacing by puberty, was often dealt with. And if it continued on, then a perpetrator would be sent packing or at least dealt with for having some kind of odd shadow occupying their space. It didn't even exist in herds of animals, packs of animals. They've all had their methods of dealing with somebody, one of their number, who was taking too much power and exerting negative narcissism. Whoever says that animals in the wild are not intelligent, I don't know what they're talking about, because none of them would suffer the kind of negative narcissism that we suffer in our current modern society. They would deal with it. So if we are a healthy narcissistic individual, for want of a better term, I can't think of any other way I need to put it at the moment, but if that is the case, then we can use what we've got to get into a position where we can help others. Now, this is where it changes. This is where you will use your wherewithal, whatever you've got, to surge forward and get where you need to do. You have to do this in marketing a lot of the time, and quite frankly, I'm not very good at marketing. I don't really like doing it, but it's necessary sometimes. But you have to surge forward and you have to do what you have to do to get where you need to go. But then you need to change it, and normal people will. Now, it's the people who have the problem of suffering from more of a negative narcissism, shall we say, who can't do that, because the abuse they've suffered in the past means that if they start to allow others to come forward and do what they need to do as well, then the pain they have inside is going to be so great that they will fold up. So they have to keep coming out and saying, hey, look at me, aren't I great, in a nutshell. That's the way it is. So what we're seeing here is the two sides of a coin. It's one coin. We've got the negative on one side, you turn it round and you've got the positive. And of course, the difficulty with this is that it becomes hard to tell the difference. Which is the positive and which is the negative? And that's how we get fooled so many times by toxic people who come into our lives and try to take us for a ride. We hardly know that they're doing it. And then we can become very distrustful of people who might well just be innocent, because we get wary all the time that we don't want to be hurt anymore. It's a very difficult situation we find ourselves in. But it's very, very hard to exhibit the positive, because in effect you have to have a bit of get up and go and let's surge forward and do this, and then you've got to call a halt and stop and say, right, now I've got where I need to go. Now I can help other people to do what they need to do, or whatever situation you find yourself in, you've got to back off and let others do what they need to do. This is very difficult, primarily because the world we live in, this civilized consumerist world that we're all part of, doesn't permit us to do that. Sometimes it doesn't recognize that. So we're caught between this difficult idea of pushing ourselves forward and having confidence and doing what we need to do because we passionately want to do it, and thinking, oh, I better hold myself back because I don't want to look egotistical. I don't want to look as if I'm taking over. So I'll much rather sit in the corner and not draw attention to myself. Oh boy, it is a difficult situation. And at the very end of it, at the very well, it's something that stretches from one level to another, extreme ends. At the very extreme end of the negative, you have somebody who just goes around using and abusing people because they can't face themselves, developing toxic, really toxic relationships and putting everyone through a whole lot of uncomfortable stuff. And on the other end, you've got somebody who can't bring themselves forward at all. So they're shy and retiring and they hold themselves back and they can't find it in them at all to bring themselves forward. So they let things go, they let things pass over them. Now, that sort of person does have the other end within them. They do have a capacity for narcissism within them. We all do. And this takes me back to the myth with Narcissus and Echo. Why did they have that myth all that time ago? Narcissus is the one who is going to that extreme end. He loves himself. He looks in the water and he sees his reflection and says, there's no one better than you. I'm the best thing. And that blinds him. And this is what narcissism in the negative sense does. It blinds you. It causes you to think that your image is the best thing since sliced bread. Look at the people with their selfies. Look at the people on social media, all pulling the faces, all saying, have I got my best side? Is this going to be acceptable for people to love me and like me? So that tells you that inside they are suffering. But they can't do anything about it. They've just got to keep giving this image. So that is the manifestation or personification of Narcissus in our modern world. On the other side of the coin, when you've got Echo, she represents this shy and retiring one. She represents the one who's so in need that all she can do is keep looking at him and begging for what he can give her because she loves him. This is people pleasing run riot. Echo is a real people pleaser. And if you are a person pleaser, a people pleaser, as a lot of us have been, you will identify with that. But one has the other inside them, each other, if you know what I mean. If you've got a coin, you've got two sides, you've got the negative and the positive of something, then it's likely that if you're one, you'll have the other loitering somewhere in you. So if you're really, really shy and retiring and feel that you're so embarrassed you can't come out and you can't put yourself out there, then you've got to remember that. And you've got to try and call upon a healthy sense of narcissism to move you forward, to say, look, I can be counted. I am someone who has something to give. I want to be recognised. I can do something to get myself out there. And you're accessing that. Now, it's easier to do it that way. It's easier for Echo to call upon her Narcissus than it is for Narcissus to call upon his Echo and to hold himself back. And believe me, I know about this because I've done countless workshops on this subject. And I found out through many years that it is easier to bring shy and retiring people forward, but it's much harder to say to someone who likes being in the centre all the time and being recognised all the time, being dominant all the time, look, stop it, stop doing that. Hold yourself back and let others come forward. And what I try to do in my workshops is to help the people who are shy and retiring to step forward so that we together get the person who's got the problem to understand that their dominance doesn't wash. In ancient times, it wouldn't have done. In ancient times, a really heavily narcissistic, negatively narcissistic person would be sent packing. They'd be given their marching orders. So it's unlikely that they would have developed it because nobody wants to be ostracized from your tribe. But it's unlikely to develop anyway because of initiations, which, as we know and as I've talked about before, have faded into the mists. We no longer give our young people, especially our young men, initiations to help them to understand that they mustn't run away with themselves or they are going to have trouble. And elders will look at them and know what they're doing. There's an African tribe that someone told me about not so long ago, and they said they get them to go through I think it was hunting exercises or something where they make it difficult for them, and they don't congratulate them too much on anything at all, because they need to, when there's a young individual, they say we need to cool his heart and make him gentle. And I think that explains what Narcissus should have been through back in the Greek myth. He should have had something given to him that caused him to suffer a little, to know what it's like to go through a bit of pain, but to come out the other side. So when they've been abused, these narcissistic people who are on the negative side, they haven't had that. They haven't been taken through a constructive initiation that involves difficulties, struggles, and a little pain, or sometimes big pain, and being taught to ride through it and come out the other side and to be supported when that happens. So that's what we could do with in our society, goodness knows, but we're not going to get it, are we? We have to have video talks from me to talk about it, because it's not going to go that way. So did narcissism exist in ancient life? No, not in the way we have it today. If it existed, it was just for a fraction of a second, probably, and then they said, now you're exhibiting something that if you insist on behaving like that, you're going to be slung out, mate. But it wouldn't happen, because they would take you through something, and then you'd realise if there's just one of you, if there's just one negative narcissist in an awful lot of people, a great big tribe of people who are not warming to it, it would change. They wouldn't be able to exhibit their dominance, and they wouldn't be able to control others. This is, of course, the nature of the Dictation game, which I get everyone to play in my workshops, because it shows that the person in the centre doesn't have the power. It's the community around him or her that has the power. If you want to know more of what that's about, you have to come on a workshop, because it is a good demonstration of the way we used to be in earlier times and the way we've become today, with our shift, our huge shift in power to the individual away from the community. So, the myth is a really good thing to draw upon, but we are living in a narcissistic age, and it probably ain't going to change very soon. And the best thing you can do is to understand these two sides, that there's healthy narcissism, so use it when you've got it, and be wary of toxic relationships developing. Look for red flags. I've talked about that in other videos. Learn to say no. Think about boundaries. Boundaries are very important to keep, because boundaries are usually taken away when we're young children and they never return. But, we really need to understand what this is all about. So think about that coin. We've all got the two sides within us. Reflect on it. I think I'll sign off here. So take care. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.